We've all seen it, that photographer who posts two pictures, they're both the same, one's color, one's black and white, and asks the most frustrating question in the world, color or black and white? Which is better? How's it? That question I find so frustrating, because on one hand, I get it. Okay, you want to be helped. You want some advice, you want some feedback. You're not sure, all right, and you're asking people, okay, which do you think is better? And we'll come back to why that's also a bad question later on. But on the other hand, I just want to go, do you know what? It's not your fault. It's the fault of the world that we live in now and the options that you have available to you. So I have in my hand, Joel Meyerowitz, A Question of Color. And this was released fairly recently. And on the back here, there's a bit of the blurb, and it says, what do you want, color or black and white? He says in his best, not New York accent. And then this was the question from the store assistant who served a young Joel Meyerowitz the first time he bought film for his new camera. Now, this was 1962, and series photography with black and white. There's a quote by Walker Evans, who's an exceptionally talented photographer who photographed the Great Depression and was, I think, held in high regard. And he said, you should whisper it, but color photography is vulgar. That's kind of the, what he was up against. And John Meyerowitz didn't realize that there was a choice, right, that you could photograph in color or black and white. And he decided, because he wanted to photograph in color, that he would spend some time, one camera with black and white film, another camera with color stock, and photograph pretty much the same scenes in color and black and white to see how they work. These days, we don't have to make that choice. Just wander around with a camera, take some pictures, then go into Lightroom, Photoshop, wherever, hit a couple of buttons, and it becomes black and white or infrared or whatever you choose. So we're not photographing with intent. That's why that's a frustrating question for the photographer who's asking it, is because they're trying to put something onto the image afterwards that it doesn't necessarily need or want or benefit from. Before, I've got a heap of events that are taking place, not least the two cohorts that are running in March and May, but also an in-person visit to the Irving Penn exhibition in San Francisco, the end of May, and then flying over across the States to DC to go check out the George Hurrell exhibition there as well, plus a couple of photo walks in Baltimore, and of course photo walks here in the UK. To find out more about those, I'll be letting the people in the Saturday selections know tomorrow. So if you're not already subscribed to the newsletter, check it out in the description box below. Color and black and white images are very different. Now, black and white these days seems to be like, you come to that after you've come to color photography. I mean, much more like in my own process in coming into photography. So there's I feel still a bit of an idea that people go, black and white photography is like, that's what serious photographers do, even though it's a very old and completely discredited way of seeing the world. But so they kind of go, I must do this. But they get this impression that black and white is all there in the computer, he says, pointing at his computer off screen, right? But it's not. It's up here. Color photography is up here. You need to, I say you need, how very prescriptive of me. You need to do these things. It helps if you can decide before you take the picture if it is going to be in color or black and white, because when you've made that decision, then you realize I need to treat the world differently. When I got to photo school, my whole thing had been color to that point. We didn't have the black and white darkroom or any of that kind of interest or avenue into photography. It was all go to the newsagent, get some color film, take some pictures, take it back, and you get the prints back. So being told that I was going to photograph exclusively in black and white, that was a big wake-up call, because the world looks very different in a black and white photograph. than it does in a color image. So being forced to photograph in black and white for an entire year taught me what worked in black and white, what didn't work in black and white. It taught me how to start seeing the photograph before I was taking it, because I was learning about what worked and what didn't. But it was just as simple as I'm looking here now off the camera, and I can see there's a bunch of things that are black. So some soft boxes, and there's a little calculator and some studio heads and things of that nature. And I know in black and white, they're going to be quite dark because they're black. Shadows, I know in black and white, the shadows disappear very quickly unless you're very specific about exposing for them. But in color, I don't have to worry about them so much because they don't disappear into black as quickly, giving yourself a bit of a constraint. So photographing in black and white exclusively for a weekend or a week or so, and you can do this by setting your camera to black and white, or just going into Photoshop and just kind of saying, when you ingest the images, set into black and white. I know that's not technically the right way to do it and all that sort of stuff, but at least it starts giving you, or the person who's struggling with this question, an insight into how the world looks when photographed in black and white. Then they do the process again the next week, but in color. Now, there's an interesting side effect that comes from all of that. In as much as I was sitting there thinking that I wanted to be a color photographer, it was all into rock and roll stuff, and this was the early 90s, there's lots of cross-processing, and Steve Double was doing his thing, and I was just like, wow, this is me. And I actually found out, color really wasn't my thing. I was okay with it, but it wasn't as fulfilling, certainly, as black and white photography was. I was like, black and white print, oh, look at that, it feels really cool, that's it's wonderful. And I found it a lot easier to see the world in black and white. It's only now, sort of 30 odd years later, that I'm actually even starting to begin to get to grips with color as a thing for myself, even though I kind of know all the theories and all that sort of thing. And that is because it's not me. That's something else we discover when you photograph exclusively in black and white, or you photograph with the intention of only photographing in color. Then you might go, do you know what, actually, black and white, that's my thing. Black and white, it's not there, right? Or color is not my thing, right? You might surprise yourself. That's the benefit of, deciding to make a choice before you take the picture, is at least that is committing to the image itself, and that makes everything so much stronger. It makes you, me, the person who's posing the question, start seeing the world in ways that benefit them and benefit their image. That person who's asking, oh my God, I don't know, tell me your color, black and white, help me decide, I don't know, which do you prefer? I want to shake them and say, look, the only person who can decide about your image and whether it should be color or should be black and white is you. The only person who can decide my images should be color or black and white is me. These are issues that I get upset about it, because I know that it's difficult. I know it's hard to plow your own furrow. I'm just going to do my own thing, because we do put images up online, and we most of us seek approval from other people in various degrees of seekiness, right? And you want people to like your work. I can get it, right? But you can't decide if an image is going to work better in color or black and white because 30 people said color image and 15 said black and white. So color image it is. Ansel Adams didn't make his images by committee, right? He didn't put up a load of prints of Half Dome and all that kind of stuff and said, okay, color or black and white, mostly because he thought, color. Color's not a thing, right? It's ridiculous. Nobody does that. If you want advice about your images, if you say, look, I've tried to make this in black and white and I've worked on this and I don't think it works because X, Y, and Z things. Or if, you know, somebody who's maybe a little bit knowledgeable than you would sit there and go, okay, well, all right, I'm looking at this image and I don't think it kind of works as a black and white image because these kind of things don't really translate very well in black and white, and you're missing the main thing of the image here, which is there's lots of color, which is really kind of where the image is living. Those are ideas and discussions that the person can give you. That's beneficial. But asking them to go, oh, well, I prefer color, or I prefer the black and white. You know, that's not helpful. That's not helping you grow as a photographer. It certainly didn't help me. You know, whenever I used to put pictures up online, and I have done this myself, so I'm not blame free here, of images that I was going back that I'd shot years before in color and saying, do you think this works better in black and white? No, it doesn't. It works better in color because that's how it was photographed. I took color film and I photographed it in color film. This image of the pot plant that's up on the screen, right? Those are images. It's a color image. That's what drew me to the picture in the first place, not the black and white thing. It's the color. Throughout your photography, experiment. Give yourself the option to try things for a while and see how they fit with you. See if it works or not. Have that courage to just take your own photograph, to try black and white or color. Make your own decisions by photographing things. Learn to see the world side by side, like Joel Meyerowitz did. He decided color really was for him. Now, one of the things we haven't really touched upon here, of course, is processing of black and white images, because that's where black and white, I think, really comes alive. And if you'd like to find out how to actually get towards those Ansel Adams looking prints and what have you, then check out this video out over here. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.